Welcome back, guys. I hope you enjoyed your break. Remember, it's very important just to get the oxygen going. That's what we're talking about. How do we get the oxygen going? Get the blood going. All right, just a quick recap. Where have we got what we've done so far? We're looking at the first part. We looked at the requirements of a gaseous exchange system. So important. You need to be able to take any kind of organism and see how is it made. Is it efficient? Not so efficient? Right, and all of those concepts that we looked at there. Then we looked at the whole structure of the human gaseous exchange system. And today we're going to look at how do we get oxygen into our bodies and carbon dioxide out. All right, guys, when we looked at the first concept, we said how important it was to understand the differences in terminology. And now we're looking at the process of breathing. And when we look at breathing, right, it's really important when we say this mechanical process, breathing relies on muscles. So lungs do not, the actual lungs, the alveoli, they don't have any muscles. So lungs can't actually do the work if I have to do that. It's reliant on other organs, and that comes to the diaphragm. And then we have the ribs. And in between the ribs, we have the intercostal muscles. And between the diaphragm and these intercostal muscles, we're going to bring about the process of breathing. And simply what happens is we just bring oxygen into the lungs. Guys, that's very important. Just into the lungs. And we take the carbon dioxide out of the lungs. We looked at the whole concept of inhalation and exhalation. Right, we had a little model here, which was easy for you to build at home as well, though you can show this whole concept. And the whole concept of breathing in was all about space and pressure. As I said to you, the lungs cannot breathe, right? They can't do any work. So we're reliant on this whole concept of when I need to bring air in, I make space available, I don't have a lot of pressure. And again, we have this concentration gradient when air can move from high to a low. Exactly the same as when I exhale. What happens when I exhale, right? Everything squeezes. I decrease the space, but I increase the pressure, and so I squeeze it out. Now, as I said to you, reliant on, right, these. Okay, the diaphragm, it's a muscle, and these intercostal muscles over here. They are going to bring out the process of breathing. And that's what we mean by ventilation. Bringing air in and taking air out. And that is why, right, we do tick the box for a well-ventilated system. We then looked at the whole concept of gaseous exchange. And very importantly, how was it different is we had the surface, all right? We had a barrier, and the oxygen has to cross over a surface, and so does the carbon dioxide. Yes, it does occur through a process called diffusion, but we have this respiratory surface that it has to cross. Right, we looked at how gaseous exchange occurred in the lungs, and remember, the whole concept was based about this concentration gradient. That gases will move from a high concentration, where there's a lot of them, they will move down to a low concentration. So if we have a look at this concept, when we breathe in, inhalation, do you see oxygen moves in? We have a high concentration of oxygen in the alveoli. We have a low concentration in the blood, and so oxygen moves from a high to a low. The other side of it is in the blood, we have a high concentration of carbon dioxide. In the lungs, we have a low concentration. Carbon dioxide moves down this concentration gradient into the lungs, the alveoli. The arrows are going in different directions, which means that they are exchanging, right? To exchange means to swap, And what are they swapping? They are swapping gases. So this is the first place that it happens. Now remember, guys, look here. What do the gases have to cross? A surface, right? So that is gaseous exchange. Why do I need oxygen? Oxygen needs to go to the cells. Very important for cellular respiration to occur. That's why I need the oxygen. Here's the mitochondria. What do cells produce? A lot of carbon dioxide. So the blood, the oxygen, goes from a high concentration in the blood to a low concentration in the cells. The cells have a high concentration of carbon dioxide, and that moves down the concentration gradient into the blood. Once again, the arrows are going in different directions, which means they are swapping or exchanging. And what are we exchanging? Gases. And where does this carbon dioxide go? It goes back to the lungs for gaseous exchange to occur in the lungs. Right? Another thing we just had to quickly look at, how do we transport oxygen when it gets into the blood? And we looked at this whole concept that oxygen loves hemoglobin in the red blood cells, and oxygen is transported as oxyhemoglobin. Carbon dioxide was a little bit more complicated, right, and had 3 different ways. A little bit of it dissolved in the blood plasma, but we looked at the concept that when the oxygen delivers off gets delivered off, carbon dioxide gets picked up by the hemoglobin, forming this compound called carbaminohemoglobin. We also looked at this concept that a lot of the carbon dioxide dissolves in the blood plasma, which forms an acid which we can't have, and so we transfer it, we produce it, we add a little bit of hydrogen, we make it more alkaline, and we transport it as bicarbonate ions. Okay, so let's have a look at typical questions. You will find this section, there is a lot more questions available on how we breathe and gaseous exchange. The first question says, study the diagrams below showing some parts of the respiratory system. That is the same as gaseous exchange. We can use it, the 2 terms, differently. Answer the questions that follow. Right, so first diagram. Identify parts A, B, and C. So C, it's really important that you know your structure. Number A, I'm going to just do it on here, is my larynx. Number B is my trachea. And number C, if you have a look, is going to be my bronchioles. See, they come up quite often, so you need to be able to spell them. So that's nice 3 marks, just the structure on the system. Okay, the next question. Which processes in the diagrams below illustrates inhalation? Now, inhalation is breathing in, and when we look at the muscles, what are we expecting? Right, we're expecting a bigger space to be made, which leads to less pressure. Now, if we have a look at process 1, what does it tell us? That our diaphragm is moving down, bigger space, and that my rib cage is also moving out. So because I'm making more space, definitely which process is going to be inhalation? Process 1 is going to be my answer over there. Okay, which process in the above diagrams? Now we said above because you're always going to look above, so I just put them at the bottom here so it's easy for you to see. Illustrates inhalation, all right, process 1 or 2. And we said from the previous question that it's going to be process 1. Now, the next question is, give 2 reasons for your answer. So when we look at process 1, they wanted to know what were the 2 things that were happening. So this was 1 and this is 2. So what was the first thing? Number 1, the diaphragm was contracting, and here you can put moves down. because that's what it's, let me go down, right? So that's what it's over here. So we saw the diaphragm, all right, moving down. And we know that during that, contraction occurs. The next one over here, we see that the rib cage is moving out. And the rib cage can only move out if we link it to the intercostal muscles contracting. Right, so there we go. What were the two visible reasons? The same visible reasons that led me to understanding which process was 1 and 2. Give the letters and the names. Remember, there's a reason why it's in bold. Of the muscles shown in the diagram that are involved during inhalation. Right, so it says give the letters and the names of the muscles shown in the diagram that are involved during inhalation. So now let's go over here. So number 1 will be letter E, all right? So E is my first one. That's the letter, right? The name is the diaphragm. So that's my first 2. And then my second one, my letter would be D. And those, the letter, the name is going to be my intercostals muscles. Right, so there I've got my 2 for my 4. I want to quickly go over this one because I thought it was a nice change. It says draw and label a diagram showing gaseous exchange across an alveoli. Show the arrows to show, all right, which direction it moves. So the diagram that you had to draw is you had to draw an alveoli. Then you had to, right, obviously label it. Then you had to draw a blood capillary. Label it, please, so that we know what it is. Then the next thing, use arrows. So all you simply would have done is to say oxygen. It's moving from the lungs into the blood, and you would have showed the carbon dioxide moving from the blood into, all right, the alveoli. So that would be a lovely over here, the correct diagram, how you've labeled it, and as they said, they wanted you to show the arrows. Okay, another question, a person's thoracic wall is punctured. Oh, we said during a motor accident. Explain how this will affect the breathing process. So guys, what happens if it's punctured? All right, the air pressure. So we don't have any air pressure anymore. The air pressure, all right, it decreases, all right. Also, what happens is we don't have any air pressure. So what happens to the lungs? They can't inflate and they can't bring in air. So no air not brought in. So that's why, unfortunately, when you have that kind of thing, the same as being stabbed or something, it's very important that we have that concept. All right, guys, that's all we have time for now. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.